So today's question. Someone wrote to me to say that they've got a Reflex 4 they're working on, and they've got it back together and it all works, except there's a problem with the shutter. Specifically, on the slow speeds, anywhere between a 15th and 1 second, the shutter works fine. If you use the self-timer, the shutter works fine on all speeds. But on speeds from a 30th to a 500th, if you just go to fire the shutter, there's no action. The blade's closed, they never open and reopen and close again to make the exposure. And I believe that's a problem of timing. But I've got to experiment a bit to find out exactly where the problem may lie and find the solution. So I needed a victim. This one from my parts boxes is today's sacrificial victim, and it's got problems. The meter is good. Somebody's obviously had a go at it because it's got no leatherettes. The shutter doesn't fire, and it may even have problems with the rack, or it may be the shaft inside, the cocking shaft. I'll have to find out. So next time you see this, I'll have it working again so that we can induce the fault and find the solution. Well, at the end of the day, I had this. That's our camera, all working correctly. What was its problems? There was nothing major. There was nothing really broken apart from one component. And the one component was this. This is a flash switch. Basically, it closes the flash circuit to allow you to take a flash exposure after the shutter is cocked, and then you make your exposure. You see that the shutter blades are closed in the normal state of a camera, like this, until you cock the shutter. In the normal shutter, when the shutter blades are closed, the flash contact is closed. If you were to connect up your electronic flash, the flash would fire. So you need an interrupter, which only makes contact when the shutter's fully cocked and the shutter blades are ready to go. So that was the only thing that was broken. But there were other problems. This front ring here, you can see it's been a little bit, it's got a big mark on it right here. I think the camera's probably been dropped at some stage without the lens on it, or somehow it came onto there. So this was a bit tight. The rings here didn't move smoothly. It was also quite gummy. The lever here, which opens the aperture to full aperture when you cock the shutter, was stiff. In other words, it wouldn't roll back to its closed position when you released the shutter, and so the shutter wouldn't reliably release, or it was slow to release. So there was that problem. Apart from that, the blade actuating ring, the piece that moves the shutter blades open and closed in the shutter, was very stiff. It was just quite dry, no lubricant at all, and the shutter blades had a little bit of surface corrosion on them and a little bit of oil. Nothing was moving smoothly at all. And there was one other thing. Inside the mount here for the shutter, there's a tiny little pinion which takes the motion from the shutter, the internal cocking ring, when that opens up, through to this piece here. That was just stiff on the shaft. It's a tiny little pinion. It just needed to be flushed out with some naphtha. But I ended up with a shutter that works correctly, and it helped clarify my thinking as to what the problem might be with the inquirer's camera where he had the problem with the shutter. I'll demonstrate on another shutter what I believe is going on. Here we have the front assembly from a Reflex 4, exactly the same as the one I've just shown you on the camera. And I've just serviced this one because it's going to serve as our demonstrator too. So in the normal course of events, the shutter is cocked by the cocking cam. Let's get this right. The shutter blades are fully open for viewing. When the shutter is released, shutter releases over here. See if I can hold this back. The blades start to close. At this stage, the capping plate, the mirror is being released, and as the mirror comes up it releases the capping plate, and as the capping plate comes up it strikes this little arm, and that allows this rack to continue moving and the shutter to fire. And what I believe is happening with the problem camera is that this arm here is not interrupting the action of the cam, that in fact it's being held up out of the way, or there's nothing forcing it down, and as the shutter is released it just releases completely, no interruption. And so the shutter is already fired. If you set a higher shutter speed on the shutter is already fired before the mirror starts to rise, and the capping plate follows it. And of course by the time the capping plate gets there, there's nothing for it to do. It's not releasing the action, the action's already happened. So what I believe is that this arm, which pivots on a screw here, there are two options. Either that's not pivoting correctly at that point, if that screw's mutilated, that can certainly be the case. This action would just be stiff. So once it's in the up position it would stay there. And what brings this down into the down position where it would interrupt the action of the rack? That's where we come to this little piece, which is exactly the same component that caused me problems with that other shutter, although it wasn't the same piece on this broken. This long contact here is what this arm comes up against, and you may even be able to see it flexing at that point there. Here. If this flash contact is missing, there's nothing to hold this arm down, and even if it's free to act, free to move, what will happen as soon as that rack strikes it, it'll just flip out of the way and allow the rack to go straight past, firing the shutter early, because it's firing the shutter before the capping plate has come up, and the mirror of course precedes the capping plate. So this is quite likely our problem, but if that's not the root cause, then it's likely that this is stiff here and this arm just does not move smoothly. That's it. I think that's all I need to tell you.